Yes, we will see. Well, speaking of visionaries and speaking of RPA, um, the other big sort of agentic AI announcement came from Anthropic this week, where they introduced their new release of Claude 3.5 Sonnet. But really, the big announcement was that as part of that, they released public beta of what they're calling computer use via the API. And computer use is just what it sounds like. The model now has the ability to effectively take over your computer and read the screen, literally pixel by pixel, and do keystrokes and mouse, scrolls and mouse clicks and what have you, as a way to actually create action, right? To take
Mhm.
personal action on your device. And there it's an incredibly early. This is not one of those like fake betas that's really just a precursor to release. This one has all kinds of issues. They freely admitted, and kudos to them for being visionary and pushing this out there and putting it in the wild and letting people test it with all of its flaws. That said, I went through and I watched some of the demos and I was reading through and I'm just like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, going back to the whole RPA, it's like this feels like just another version of RPA where we're effectively screen scraping. And it's like in
Mhm.
this age where everything is digitized, is that really our best approach? Is that really the best way to implement an agentic AI solution? And, maybe I'm not smart enough to get why this is necessary, but I struggle with this. I struggle with why I'm not instead looking at ways that I can inject into the data stream and understand what's going on without having to read the flipping screen, and then take action based on that. So I applaud them for their openness. I applaud them for pushing the envelope. And I'm sitting here scratching my head going, why is this the direction we're going in? I don't know. Did you have a different take on it?
Yeah, at first glance, this reminds me of some of the voice activated computing UIs that have existed for a decade or more. And they're a bit awkward, but you can use some of these voice activated tools to work Microsoft Word or Excel or spreadsheets or slides, call it your app of choice, and it will awkwardly get these things done. You can eventually get it to the cursor to the cell that you're looking for, or to do formatting for your words, but it's not super easy. And honestly, that is where Anthropic's Claude is at this point. The Claude assistant is a little bit more generalized in the tasks that it can do, but honestly, it's not that great at this point. But I do think that there is uh, a potential for this to be more useful as a computing interface. But the challenge is we are facing kind of the same issue that we've seen with Siri, with Alexa, with all of these voice activated or language activated consumer computing UXs. Wow. Thanks, Siri. Yes. Speaking
Yes, we always
of,
have to be careful.
thanks, Siri. Wow.
Saying the
Yes.
keywords. What I think is what I struggle with here is something that I've talked about a long time, and I don't think I came up with this, so apologies to whoever invented this particular concept. But when we've from the very beginning of technology, we always talked about automation in sort of these two phases or
Mhm.
two waves. And the first wave was simply automating the way things were already being done. Right? If I had a manual process that's 3 steps, I use technology to try to automate those 3 steps.
Mhm.
But the transformative power of technology came when you realized that this technology could be used to completely reinvent that process, to re-envision it, and to therefore make it much more effective, efficient, productive, whatever, because you were no longer bound by those steps. And what I feel like this is like in that first category, where it's trying to simply use this technology to replicate how we interact with the computing interface, but in the end, that isn't really what I want. I want to tell it what I want to do and go figure out how to do it. I don't care how you do it. Just go get it done. You don't need to go and do it the way I would have to do it. In fact, doing it the way I would have to do it is probably a pretty inefficient way. So I wanted to really be excited about this, and maybe when I see it in the wild, I will have a different opinion. But as of right now, I was kind of like like a big shrug.
Yeah, the irony to me is that because of the nature of generative AI, this might have unintended effects. For instance, I am betting that it's going to be difficult for computer use to figure out something like in cell C23, give me the accurate summation for the revenue of my company in 2024. Something I might ask for from a job perspective. However, it might find it very easy to do something like, hey, sign me up for a social security number. Never mind that I already have one or whatever. Like, it might be able to figure out how to navigate that social security website extremely easily based on the language that it looks at and by clicking in the right places and entering the right information by assumptions. And it makes it easier to do computer-based or web-based fraud while not making it easier to do the work that we are trying to do from a practical perspective. We'll see. Obviously, this is Anthropic's problem, but I've also seen that the likes of Google and Microsoft are also trying to get on the bandwagon quickly and talk about their plans to also support desktop-based work on agents. So this is going to be something that we see from other companies as well. It's just Anthropic was the first to really put something out there.
Yeah, and then to that point, it didn't even make it into our list because it happened so late breaking. But just today, Google announced Jarvis, which is their version of this, and we have very little information on exactly what that's going to look like. But
We'll probably chat more about
yeah,
it next week. Yep.
exactly. I'm sure we will. So just it's really an interesting development, and we'll see. And if nothing else, though, trying to always get the CIO lens on this. What is the takeaway? The takeaway is let's not forget for all of our talk about finding value and driving revenue and all of those things from AI, we are very much in experimentation stage where these technologies are coming and going at light speed because we're trying to figure out what works and what makes sense. And so you need to just take everything with a very big grain of salt.
Yeah, but that's part of the exciting part about this, though, that we have all this primary research that is being turned into products in weeks. And normally this stuff sits in somebody's lab for 5 years and never gets turned into anything, just like Xerox PARC did with, basically the Windows UI or the Mac UI, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult if you're in that CIO seat or any enterprise IT leadership suite of figuring out where to place those bets and try to maneuver through that. And especially because you need to assess it both at a micro level, specifically to your organization and your go to market and your business strategies, but also at the macro level. And so